talk about a documentary that just came out on Netflix recently, and that is called Tell Them You Love Me. So I kept seeing this pop up on my Netflix feed. And at first when I saw it, I was like, I don't know if I'm going to get into this or not. But I kept seeing people constantly talk about it on Twitter and how good it was. So finally I was like, well, it is number one in the top 10 US movies in Netflix, so it obviously has to be good. I ended up watching it last night, and I'm so glad I did. I definitely recommend checking it out if you haven't already. And I want to share what all happened in the documentary and share my thoughts. There's this family called the Johnson family, and it consists of Derrick, who we see in the middle, and then his brother John, who is on the right, and then his mother, who's on the left, and he lives with his mother. And when Derrick was young, his mom was noticing that he wasn't catching on to things fast. He was nonverbal. He could only really talk with his hands or by pointing at things, and he couldn't do like basic things like hold his bottle or hold his head up. And finally, he was diagnosed with cerebral palsy. The doctors told Derrick's mother that he would never be able to take care of himself. And once Derrick's father found that out, he pretty much just dipped out and left Derrick's mom and her two sons to defend for themselves. And Derrick's brother John, he tried to make Derrick feel as normal as possible. He was always going out and hanging out with Derrick, always by his side. Derrick and his brother John were really close, and John said that since Derrick's nonverbal, that he would get really frustrated sometimes and start hitting himself and just acting out. So John ended up going to college, and while he was in college, he had this professor, and she showed this movie about this girl who is extremely disabled, and she reminded John of his brother Derrick. And this girl didn't know how to communicate because she was nonverbal. So this lady ended up pulling out this little keyboard, and it's supposed to help with this thing called facilitated communication, and it's for people who are disabled, and it's like a test to see like how many words they know, if they can spell. While John was in Anna's class, he saw this movie on facilitated communication and saw this disabled girl learn facilitated communication, and she ended up using it to communicate, and she was very intelligent, and she was able to go to college and graduate at the top of her class and was able to work a good job when people thought that she would never be able to be independent, and they thought that she had the mindset and knowledge of a 5-year-old, and she just came and proved everyone wrong. So John decided to go to his teacher Anna after class and ask her if he can learn more about facilitated communication, because he has a brother with cerebral palsy and he thinks it would be good for him. Anna was more than thrilled to help out Derrick. Her mom was big on facilitated communication and did it for over 20 plus years, so Anna feels like she's the perfect person to take on this challenge. So on the weekends, Derrick would meet up with Anna, and she would slowly go through different questions with him, and they started off with yes or no questions, and she realized Derrick was understanding what she was asking. So then she started asking him a bunch of questions, trying to get to know him. She asked him what he prefers to be called, and he spelled out D-man. And she's like, D-man? What do you mean by that? And then she ended up talking to his mother, and apparently when he was 13 years old, he had a teacher that used to call him D-man or D-man, and he said that teacher started helping teach him how to walk and was the biggest role model for him in his life. So that's like his favorite person. The family was extremely excited, and they felt like Derrick was intelligent, and he just wasn't able to communicate all his life, so his intelligence has been hidden and he now has a voice. And just when I thought that Anna was going to be the hero in this story, but as soon as I started thinking that, just minutes later, I realized how wrong I truly was. Anna started crossing boundaries with Derrick that were extremely inappropriate and unprofessional. While Anna was using facilitated communication and meeting up with Derrick on the weekends to try to learn who Derrick is and give him a chance to talk, she was married to this guy and she had children with him and she had been with him for years. But then she found herself falling in love with Derrick. She said that she just couldn't help herself with how intelligent he was. He had a way with words that just swooped her off her feet. And she said one day he and her were talking and she decided to type to him, "I love you." And then he ended up typing it back, "I love you too." And then she claims he took the keyboard and asked if she could take her shirt off. And then she took her shirt off. And then she claims he took the keyboard and told her to take the rest of her clothes off. And she was just sitting there naked. And then she claims he's like, "Oh, can I get a kiss?" And she gave him a kiss. Then she claims he typed again, "Can I get another kiss?" And she gave him another kiss. And then next thing you know, one thing led to another. And she ended up taking this man's virginity and cheating on her husband. I just could not believe when she admitted to sleeping with this man, and she admitted to it proudly, and she was still smiling on this documentary like she was still madly in love with him. This girl is just so delusional, and she was talking about how she needed to figure out what was going to go on with her marriage because she wanted to be with Derrick. And the only problem is she had one thing getting in between her being with Derrick, and that was Derrick's mother. Because Derrick's mother, as I shared at the beginning of the video, she was told when Derrick was a baby that he would never be able to take care of himself. And it's obvious when we look at Derrick in the documentary, she has to spoon feed him everything because he can't even hold a spoon by himself. He can't like pick up things and hold them in his hands. So he needs a lot of help during the day. But next thing you know, Anna decides to go over to Derrick's mom's house with Derrick, and she sits Derrick's mom down, and they think they're about to get like an update on what he has learned from facilitated communication. Instead, Anna sits right next to Derrick on the couch and she starts holding hands with him, and she looks his mother straight in the eyes and she says, "Yeah, me and Derrick made love, and he's more than a man than you'll ever have any idea." Plus, she said it to the mom while the brother is sitting right next to the mama, and it just was so inappropriate, and they were just flabbergasted. They did not know what to say. She decided she wanted to be with Derrick and she wanted full control of Derrick. So what do people do when they want control of someone? They do whatever they can to isolate them from their loved ones. So she tried to do whatever she can to try to get Derrick out of his mother's house, even though his mother was told he'll never be able to live on his own and he can't do a lot of things on his own. But she was convinced that he's progressed so much and that Derrick has told her that he wants to live on his own. He's tired of being smothered. And Anna was just getting on to his mom nonstop about this, that she finally caved and broke and let him move in by himself. But he kind of still had a little bit of someone watching him. It was like a house where he had more freedom, but I guess there was somebody who kind of kept an eye on him. I saw someone else point out that they believe Anna thought she had white savior complex, and I cannot agree more. And she ends up telling Derrick's mom that she plans to leave her husband, but she completely lied. She still hadn't left her husband at that point. They cut Derrick off from seeing her anymore, and she was doing whatever she could to try to get around the family. She's reaching out to the places that Derrick would go and ask, "Oh, I'm not supposed to see him, but is there a way I can just stop by and see him real quick?" So the family was like, okay, she's gonna do whatever she can. There's no way we can allow this to continue to happen. The family realized it was not going to stop. She was going to get to Derrick one way or another. So the only way they could officially stop her was taking her to court and trying to get her charged for SAing and taking advantage of Derrick. She feels like she didn't SA Derrick. She feels like she just helped give him a voice. And I feel like her, out of all people, she should understand this after working with disabilities for years, how a disabled person can't get proper consent. And I feel like if you would have asked her, is that appropriate to have a relationship with a disabled student? If you would have asked her that about anybody else, she would have said that it was wrong. But the fact that it's her situation and Derrick, now she's going to act like it's okay. I guess she's just blinded by love. But the family, they decided to take her to court. And when they took her to court, they did a thorough investigation. When it comes to these keyboards that they use to do all the facilitated communication, they apparently save everything. So the police were able to take Anna's keyboard and go back and read all the conversations that she had with Derrick. You guys are not going to believe everything that the police found out. First, let's get into facilitated communication. So facilitated communication has become discredited in the scientific community, with people suggesting that any communication which results from the technique is just simply a projection of the facilitator, because the facilitator has to help hold the person's hand and help guide them to letters. A good example of this is like how people have debunked Ouija boards, because even if you're unconsciously doing so, you will still guide your hand or someone else's hand to spell out something that you wanted to say. When they started doing controlled tests on the facilitated communication, they found that the messages were coming from the facilitators instead of the subjects, and some of the individual stories were even more damning. Like, for example, they sat down this girl with her facilitator, and they were asking her, like, hey, what do you see in this picture? At first, they showed the facilitator and the girl pictures of the same thing, like a flower, and so they would both write down flower, and then they would switch it up, and they would show the facilitator like a picture of a smiley face, and they would show the girl a picture of a flower, and every single time, the girl would not write down what she saw. She would write down what the facilitator saw every single time. So it just goes to show that she was influenced by what the facilitator said. And the police looked into the keyboard, and they found out that Anna was pretty much having all these conversations by herself. And they went to test Derrick's intelligence, because she was claiming that he could go to college and graduate college. He was way smarter than they had any idea. Once Anna was no longer facilitating what Derrick said and they tested him, they found out that he had the intelligence of a 4-year-old, and he was in no position to take care of himself like Anna was continuously suggesting. So that goes to show that he was in no position to consent if he is that disabled and has the mind of a 4-year-old. I feel so bad for the family, because you know they had to get excited and their hopes were probably high that Derrick was going to be able to live a life that they thought he would never be able to. But then come to find out, Anna was just having these conversations for him and pretty much making all these decisions for him. And Anna ended up getting charged, and she was sentenced to 2 different counts, and it was 12 years for each count. So she was supposed to spend up to 24 years in prison, but she only had to spend 2 years in prison before she hired a good lawyer, and she ended up appealing it, and she was able to get out. And she ended up getting left by her husband, because after he found out that she had banged her disabled student. He couldn't do it no more, so he ended up leaving her. And now she's having issues holding a job because she claims every time she gets a job, like in the public eye, after people figure out who she is, people start calling her job and immediately get her fired. So now she's like working from home, so people don't know exactly who they're speaking to when she's working with them. But this was just a freaking wild ride, and I could not believe it. Even after she went to prison and got out, this lady is still delusional and feels like she did absolutely nothing wrong. Derrick's mother said that the impact that Anna left still greatly impacts Derrick today. Apparently, after he was not allowed to see Anna for a while, he developed some major emotional and anger issues, and he had to get on medication to calm himself down. Then after Anna took his virginity, the mother claimed that he was constantly playing with himself, and when he got that itch, he had to like scratch it right then and there and had like no self-control. And she blames Anna because she feels like if he would have never had that experience with Anna, then he would have never known what he was missing out on. At Anna's sentencing, the judge had read a letter that her ex-husband had wrote, and he pretty much called her a narcissist and said that she was self-absorbed. And I feel like everything that he said about her was so on point. She just cares about herself, and she doesn't care who she hurts along the way. And really, it's like a full circle moment because she's so narcissistic and selfish. And at the end of the day, she was pretty much communicating with herself. So instead of falling in love with D-Man, essentially she fell in love with herself, like she pretty much already has, which is kind of ironic. I wanted to touch on some other information about facilitated communication. A Frontline PBS special, Prisoners of Silence, covered the 1992 case of false SA allegations that were generated through facilitated communication. It was sent into facilitated communication into the shadows, and in an eerily similar 2007 case, a man was arrested and spent 80 days in jail after his autistic daughter allegedly accused him of SAing her through facilitated communication. There have been numerous people that have been arrested in the past now due to disabled people claiming on this keyboard that they were essayed by family members or relatives, and it ended up causing a lot of drama. But at the end of the day, there's no other evidence to hold up these claims, so they really didn't hold up in court. There are other cases out there like Anna's. Last year, an Australian residential care officer pleaded guilty to 2 indecent acts on an autistic girl that was 21 years old. She was nonverbal. And he had claimed that things had started through facilitated communication, and she was hitting on him through the keyboard, and that's what started them having this relationship. And last year, a pharmaceutical executive by the name of Gigi Jordan, she was found guilty of first-degree manslaughter after she unalived her autistic 8-year-old son after giving him too much drugs, after she claims that he took the BlackBerry and I guess like he used her BlackBerry phone to communicate, would just type what he needed to say. And she claimed that he typed, "I need a lot of drugs to die peacefully. I wish you'd do it soon." And she's like, "Okay, I got you." And that's when she gave him the deadly dose, and he ended up passing away. I think Anna is a dangerous woman. She took advantage of this disabled man, and the fact that she can just recount those events and smile and just seem so happy and like it's all a game as she recites these events, it just kind of shows like how crazy this lady is deep down, and the fact that she still hasn't realized how serious this is and how much this has affected Derrick and his whole family. And it seems like she's still living in fantasy land at this point. But that is it for this video, guys. Sorry for this video being so long, but this documentary was like an hour plus long, and I just needed to talk about it. Let me know what you guys think about everything in the comments below. What did you think of this documentary? What other documentaries do you recommend? Do you guys want to see me cover more documentaries? Because I watch just as much documentaries as I do reality TV. Like, I would consider myself a full-on documentarian expert at this point because I love me a good old documentary. So if you guys have any recommendations, definitely let me know in the comments below. Give this video a thumbs up, subscribe, and thank you so much for watching.